Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to AuscastNetwork.com for details.
It's The In Show, Australia's only show dedicated to innovation from Adelaide, Australia and across the globe.
Hi, this is David Grice and Troy Sincock. This show is all about innovation, the inspiring people that have seen things that they think they can make better for us mere mortals without those super brains.
And it's interesting we're talking about innovation in this way because there's things that I use on a daily basis that have made my life so much better. But somebody thought of that years ago.
Like your electric toothbrush, for
Exactly. We did have that conversation many episodes ago, actually. But it's true. We are using things that innovators have created for us to use.
Isn't it funny how something feels so new initially, and within the shortest possible time, it's just integrated into our lives. It's like it's always been that way, and it's not until you stop and look back that you realise, how much is moving around you. And often there's that reluctance to adopt a new technology, and then, next thing you know, it's completely changed the way we live.
Yeah. Look, the mobile phone is a classic example of that because, we wanted a communication device, somebody that we could pick up and talk to somebody. Now there's probably more communication going on through text messaging and emails and all sorts of other things through our phones than there is actually people on the phone.
Yeah.
And it's, the fact that the camera in the phone is better than most $2,000 cameras is just mind-blowing as well.
Just an example of some of the innovations we're talking about on The In Show. Now, if you're enjoying the program, make sure you subscribe to our new feed in Apple Podcasts to keep listening to The In Show podcast. What you have to do is resubscribe to The In Show with the coloured logo. There's two versions, one's black and white, one's coloured. Make sure you resubscribe to the coloured one if you only subscribe to the black and white.
On the show today, we catch up with Dan Thorsland, Mighty Kingdom's General Manager, and they're a company who's worked with international brands such as Disney, Lego, Moose Toys and Kit Kat, and developed games and apps for over 24 million people, Troy. And Troy and I presented the In Show in front of a live audience as part of the Adelaide Podcast Festival. Hear more from Leanne Isaacson and how people responded to the In Show.
I went on to LinkedIn, 2007, in October 2007, so 10 years ago, and I just sort of fiddled around with it for a while and sort of started building my network in 2012. I learned a bit more about it and it's just been something that's just been a gradual thing.
That's later in the show. But now here's Claire with more in news, including a story about the moon getting its own mobile phone network. What else have you got for us, Claire?
Hi guys, this week I'll be talking about how Tesla is using its technology to cool down classrooms in Hawaii, but first, scientists in the United States have found a new way of protecting ourselves against skin cancer. They've discovered that a strain of a very common skin condition called Staphylococcus epidermidis contains bacteria that can protect against the sun's ultraviolet light. The researchers are optimistic it could be used to develop new preventative skin cancer treatments. Overall, the findings highlight the importance of using internal and external microbes, otherwise known as bacteria, as a means of preventing certain diseases from manifesting. This discovery was a surprise, as the scientists were actually studying whether the Staph strain could be used to destroy bad bacteria that causes strep throat. They've already tested it on mice and the results have been quite successful. They injected the strain into mice with tumours and found that the cancerous lumps became 60% smaller than those in mice that hadn't been treated. They're now looking forward to starting clinical trials on humans. After successfully building the world's biggest lithium-ion battery in South Australia, Tesla is now providing cheap energy solutions to schools in Hawaii that desperately need it. In the tropical state of the United States, temperatures are consistently high. This makes learning difficult because most schools don't have air conditioners. Why? Hawaii has extremely high energy prices and not enough money to install and run AC in over 2,000 classrooms. So Tesla have partnered with the Hawaii State Department of Education to make sure students aren't put off getting an education. They've provided schools with solar panels to generate energy and power walls to store it. This means they have access to cheap green energy that doesn't increase in price. Under the initiative, schools have also received ceiling fans, heat-reflective paint jobs on roofs, extra shade and better ventilation systems that are used at night. Plus, the students are now able to learn more in class about environmentally friendly energy sources and how green energy production works. Almost 1,200 classrooms have received assistance already. In a world first, or should I say Milky Way galaxy first, the Moon is set to receive its own mobile phone network. Major corporations Vodafone, Nokia and Aldi have partnered with a company called PT Scientists to embark on the first ever privately funded mission to the moon. They're hoping to install a functioning and stable mobile phone network. You're probably wondering, why does the moon need its own mobile phone network? Well, it would mean that for the first time ever, live high-definition videos could be streamed straight to planet Earth. Plus, it would improve communication and data transfer systems using Audi's rovers and other space technologies. Vodafone has nominated Nokia to develop the actual network, which is expected to be a device that weighs about the same as a cup of coffee. It's going to be a 4G network instead of a 5G one because the newest network is still undergoing testing, so it's not reliable enough to be installed on the moon. The technology will be blasted into space on SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket in 2019 from Cape Canaveral in Florida. And that's what's in news this week.
Thanks, Claire. Well, David, it seems that they're effectively putting the infrastructure on the moon to have in place before we actually end up living there.
Yeah, I know. I mean, imagine getting your first phone call from someone on the moon.
I mean, it's mind-boggling to think that there'll be technology delivering all these incredible pictures to us. Something that seemed impossible, which is this dot that you'd see in the sky, and now that we're that close to it, that while we might not be physically living there, the devices that we're putting in place are living on the moon.
I still have one burning question about it, though. Why?
Well, why not? David Grice and Troy Sincock, we're talking innovation on The In Show. You can check us out at theinshow.online Facebook and follow The In Show on Twitter. Coming up, we talk to a gaming company working with top-tier brands and digital partners including Microsoft, LucasArts, Disney, Moose Toys and Lego.
It's all about innovation. The In Show.
Hi, I'm Robin Sands from Link4 Australia, and you're listening to The In Show.
It's David Grice and Troy Sincock, and we have been nominated for the Australian Podcast Awards, David.
In the business and marketing category.
Yes, it was business, marketing and innovation. They cut off the innovation because that was just too long a sentence for anyone to grapple with. So business and marketing, first time we've fallen into that space.
It is, but nevertheless we fit.
We absolutely do. And right now you can vote for us in the popular vote. So if you're enjoying what you're hearing on The In Show and you reckon it's worth your 30 seconds to log on and tick a box, well, please do that.
And so far, we've got 2 votes, Troy.
We do. I wonder whether we can find another one before the show's through.
Yes.
The In Show.
Founded in 2010 by 2 guys, Mighty Kingdom has released over 75 games and applications for mobile and web to over 24 million customers worldwide. They've built a team from all walks of life and have worked with international brands such as Disney and Lego, Moose Toys and KitKat. Dan Thorsland is Mighty Kingdom's general manager. Now, how did you go about getting this off the ground, Dan?
It was something that Jindo Lee, who people might know from HappyCo, which is one of Adelaide's more successful startups. He's currently in San Francisco now. And a guy who used to work for me. His name is Phil Mays. I now work for him. If I have one talented life, it's identifying people that are a lot smarter than I am and not pissing them off. So Phil and Jindo started Mighty Kingdom back in 2010. It was more of a blended application development company than it necessarily was a games company. When Happy Inspector or HappyCo took off, Jindo moved overseas. Phil continued to run the business. We started to focus more on games, and then he brought me in about 4 years ago when we got up to 6. And he said, I might need somebody with a gray beard who looks kind of fatherly. So he's like, all right, let's get Dan in. And notably, Phil just grew a beard this past Christmas and is looking quite paternal. So yeah, he and Jindo started it off. Fair credit to them. But I think since then, like Phil and I have worked really doggedly to grow the business from that 6. And now we're just pipping 50. We're really close to 50 now, and with big expansion plans. And it's been an amazing 4 years. So happy to talk about it.
What has that been like, growing that quickly?
Honestly, when you look behind you, it's like raising a child. You just kind of do one step every day. The trajectory of the business was to always hire a lot of the people that we meet in South Australia who are great game developers, and there are lots of them. So for me, and it's kind of mostly from Phil's prodding, is that Phil would always hire people in the company that we couldn't quite afford to pay for yet, but we're always just close enough if I could just get another deal. So I ended up focusing mostly on trying to bring some of the bigger partner clients from overseas that would park relatively large projects that you won't get funded from an Australian company here in Adelaide, and then that would allow us to hire against that. So it's, we've never bitten off more than we can chew. I'd say if there's one great survival instinct at Mighty Kingdom, is that the team is always extremely committed to quality. And every product that we deliver ends up being a great business card for the next 5 products. So, when Disney booked us in and we went out and we talked to Moose Toys about the Shopkins brand, they said, well, what major brands do you work on and why would we trust you with our toy line? Is Disney big enough? Well, okay, that'll do. And then when, somebody that Phil and I knew at Lego were looking around for a developer who was very good at developing high-quality apps for the kids space, they looked at the Shopkins list, and I know those guys. And again, that credibility was there because we were consistently within the top 50 to the top 20 in terms of the App Store for that kids category. So I can't say that it's not scary. It's always scary as you take on the responsibility of all those people. But it's always been a natural trajectory of the company because that's where the business as well as the global industry is. It's growing.
Yeah. So
it is growing.
I mean, growing so fast as well, like Troy said. How do you find the talent? I mean, surely that's...
How do we not find the talent is the question. Well, look, we're really fortunate in that we are, by an order of magnitude, the biggest developer in South Australia. So we do get a lot of attention. We have very good interaction with local education. Just recently, we ran a graduates program. We had about 8 slots to fill, and we had over 218 applicants.
Wow.
So, we were really fortunate that most 25, between 18 and 25-year-old, up to 30-year-old digital professionals in Australia would love to make a video game. I think there's a natural interest in most young professionals nowadays. It's something that they do. It's something that they increasingly spend their free time doing. So as soon as they have, any kind of inclination to create content or to learn how to code, they'd love to get into the video game business. So we get a lot of really high-quality applicants. We also have a very, very good engagement with all the local universities. We're always talking to the heads of school at UniSA, University of Adelaide, Flinders, and probably most importantly, the Academy of Interactive Entertainment, which is a specialist training facility here. It's national, but the one that we've got here in SA, we hired probably 7 graduates from there last year, and we'll continue to hire graduates from there. They're very good.
It sounds like gaming has become a more significant part of your business. How has that developed over time?
It was a commitment. It really was. We kind of, Phil and I, probably maybe 2 years ago. It's hard to remember now. I'm getting old. My memory, which date it was. But Phil and I were sitting there, and there's not a lot of sales in the pipeline, and it's getting hard to drag this deal across the line. And Phil's thinking, maybe we should kind of split the company in 2 and focus one part of the company on games and focus the other part of the company on just general innovation and app development and service stuff, and talk to banks. And we have worked really well with real estate customers in the past. And then I just said, it's not what the team wants, And he's like, yeah, you're right. Like everybody at the company wants to work on games. We just have to work that much harder to bring fee-for-service clients down, to the Southern Hemisphere and to South Australia and show them that we can make great products for them. And I think the Moose deal was the thing that really opened those doors because instead of a one-off project like we were getting from a lot of the other people we work with, this was one where we partnered with Moose. They gave us a lot of ownership over the products and, most importantly, shared some of the revenue on the back end. So that allowed us to grow that part of the business, commit a team of 12 people to just games, and then as money would come in and revenue would generate out of those games, it allowed us to do additional hires and seek more games clients. And for, I would say, the past 2 years, we focused 99.9% of the company is on that. And every new hire is a game developer.
And the clients that you get, are they coming to you or are you having to actively go out and search for them?
Both. We are putting a few folks on a plane overseas. They're going to the Game Developers Conference in San Francisco in mid-March. And then I think prior to that, 2 of them are going to South by Southwest to do a little bit of meet and greet there. And then they're all going to swing back through Burbank and talk to a few contacts we've got in the studios there. I used to work at Warner Brothers a long time ago, so I still have halfway decent networks into the studio systems back in the States. That helps. But a lot of it is, they won't work with a remote developer because of the time zone differences and the tyranny of distance if they don't see a really good product on the shelf. And if you look at the reviews in the App Store and you just play the games, the feedback is always like, this is fantastic stuff. This is really much better than most of the competition out there because we take it very seriously. And we really commit to a high-quality bar.
I wanted to just... hear from you, what it's like working in a different time zone with the company. I mean, I know someone who scores films here from Adelaide. There's a guy from Chicago who married someone in Adelaide and now lives here.
To the best of us.
Yeah.
In my case, the worst of us.
And he referred to it being extremely efficient because, people on the other side of the globe could effectively sort of issue some direction, go to bed, wake up the following day, and the work was done. Is that how it is for you too?
As long as you have the right relationship with the client. That's the most important thing. If you're dealing with a large studio, it can be quite bureaucratic. So in the time I've been here, I've been in Adelaide about 17 years. I've worked with a lot of overseas studios, Rockstar, Midway, Atari, LucasArts, and it really, your success is always based on whether or not you have a good relationship with your vendor overseas or your client overseas. If they want to micromanage you and they don't trust you, if there's issues with the stability of any build during that product cycle and you lose a little bit of that confidence, suddenly it becomes a big deal. You're waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning. They're having critical meetings around the fact that they think the project's at risk. That's the bad side of it. The good side of it is like your friend and like where we are now. If they understand what you do, and they know that, we're just going to get out of the way and let you guys be experts in what you do, which is make great games for kids around 6 to 12, then they wake up in the morning and they look at a product that is well-intentioned and, designs that are well thought through and a stable build, and they just tick the box, give you a bit of feedback. You do a few late-night phone calls with them, but for the most part, they just encourage you to keep doing what you're doing. Because they're not going to bring the work to you if you don't do something that they can't get elsewhere. That's the key.
Yeah.
And if you're a great film composer and they want your certain touch and they know they can package up that bit of work and just trust you to get the job done, then it's great. You get to work in your socks. And be very relaxed.
I don't think he even wears socks. In fact, he wears very little at times, which is a bit confronting.
See? Perfect. There you go. If you want a sock-free existence, you know what you need to do. So that it has its issues. And if you look at the VFX industry, and you look at obviously an industry that's about to boom with Technicolor coming here, and you look at other content creation businesses, it's a tricky business, and I will say this as an American, it's tough dealing with American creatives because they want their hands on it. They want to know that you're in sync with what their vision is. And if you're dealing with somebody whose vision is a bit blurry, to be polite, then you run into that trouble of being a remote studio. Very difficult to satisfy somebody who basically doesn't know what they want.
So was the expansion of Mighty Kingdom something that sort of organically happened, or was it something that you'd kind of planned from the beginning and then all of a sudden it's now taking a different tack?
It's I would say if you asked Phil, he said it was always a plan. In Phil's mind, he always wanted to get the studio as big as it could be because he really wanted to see particularly the South Australian development community bring back some of those big projects. Because Phil came here to work at Ratbag when they were still going, and then Ratbag, because Americans were running the show, point taken, shut it down. And moved the IP overseas. So he thankfully stuck around in the community, figured out how to make his way. We worked together at Chrome when we were doing Star Wars games here. But again, we were part of a national studio system, and it wasn't wholly South Australian. And unfortunately, when the GFC hit and it just was uncompetitive having labor in Australia, that got shut down again.
Right.
So a lot of it in Phil's mind is that we have to be able to build a big studio, but we have to make sure that we have a very diverse revenue stream and we're really running our own game. And, I have to say, if there's one person in South Australia who's had a lot of faith in the games industry and has put his everything on the line, all body parts and property included, it's Phil. Yeah. He's always backed the business every time to grow and hire more, and it really, all of us have a lot of faith in the fact that, we'll figure out that safety net. If we go 5 or 10 too deep into how many people we can really carry in terms of bookings, we'll just get on the phones and work them harder, you know, and get another great game out. Yeah.
So what does it look like day to day at Mighty Kingdom? I'm picturing absolute chaos.
No, not at all. Today, I have to say, I walked in the door and there were free cupcakes.
Wow.
Yeah, it's
never
like,
happened
how
here.
can you start a day better than that? Thanks to Amy, one of our animators, put her business card in a cup at a great cupcake shop on Peary, and they showed up at 9 o'clock in the morning with trays full of cupcakes for everyone because she won that piece. There's
Fantastic.
Lego everywhere. You just come by the facility. We just moved into a new co-working facility called Game Plus, which is specific to the games industry. So we have about 60 seats out of the 180 that they're going to be able to accommodate within that. And we have our own dedicated section on the floor. And it's great. We've got really nice electric-powered standing desks that rise and lower depending on the height you want. Great chairs. It's fantastic. And I think the best way I could describe it is one person who wandered through the other day from an investment group says, well, a whole bunch of really engaged, bright minds. That's what you see. It's not chaotic. I think it's quite well managed, that we have a very flat management structure. We do very Scrum-style daily meetings where everyone stands up and just runs down the tasks they're going to do for that day. And yeah, most people get out of there by 7 o'clock, you know. So it's not at all what the I would say the bad old days of hardcore console development was, where there were a lot of late nights. I think my 4th day on the job at Ratbag when I started here was a 3 a.m. job. Trying to get a milestone out.
Wow.
Yeah, literally going downstairs and plugging a drive into a computer so we could push that ISO across what was international bandwidth at that point, which I think was like, if I was lucky, 800K a second.
Yeah.
Just watching a progress bar and sucking coffee.
Yeah.
You know, it's very different than that now. It's I think it's a great atmosphere. And with the amount of people that we're bringing in, I think we've only had 2 people quit in 4 years, maybe 3. So our retention's pretty good given our growth numbers.
On that point, how important is it for you with the development of culture and then maintaining the culture and then helping that culture move and evolve as the team grows?
I would say it's Phil's number one job and obsession. He's always looking at ways to engineer for growth, but also to engineer for people's success. And even last week, he was throwing some feedback surveys out and trying to measure a lot of the temperature of how the team was feeling, because we're about to bring in 8 new hires in 1 week, you know, which, you know, you add 20% to your company, no matter how solid it is, it's going to be tough. And so he thinks about it all the time. I used to, but I think I'm getting to that point where it's hard for me as a guy who's been at it for 35 years to understand what it's like for a young professional to come into an industry that I certainly didn't grow up in. I grew old in it. I didn't grow up in it. But I, you know, for me, from a distance, I think people are really looking after each other really well there. I love that team. I love walking in there every day.
And is it about hearing from the team themselves, or is it about you trying to, I don't know, just bring new things in and keep it exciting and you know, all that sort of thing?
Yeah, again, all of the above. You know, we want to talk to the team. We try to create as much communication from the team back to managers. I always say that they don't work for me. I work for them. My job is to go out there and find the kind of stuff that they want to work on. I think I spend most of my time when an opportunity arises going back and walking around on the floor and pitching stuff to people. Do you want to work on this? Do you want to work on that? I talked to Goran Ruse about a year ago now, who was a thinker in residence here in South Australia. You guys, I'm sure you know him. And it was interesting when he was talking about how Helsinki works and how there's such a demand for talent in specific kinds of professions that most of the people there that are starting stuff up, even when they have money, are out there trying to pitch to get the best resources. So for me, the first point of sale is, does my team want to work on this?
Right.
And if they don't, I pass it along. I refer the business to somebody else, usually in South Australia. Yeah, so it's a bit of both. The team really drives us to go out and find more fun things to work on, and we certainly, you know, turn every rock over possible to find those fun things for them.
Well, it's been wonderful talking to you today. That's Dan Thorsland from Mighty Kingdom. Thanks for joining us on the In Show.
Thanks for having me, Troy.
And if you want to find out more about what Mighty Kingdom are getting up to, it's mightykingdom.com. It's David Grice and Troy Sincock on the In Show. Next, we hear what went down when we presented the In Show live in Adelaide at the Elephant Hotel.
Download the Phoner app before you head to your next event. Find people easier, market yourself better, and get connected using Phoner. That's spelled P-F-O-N-R. Phoner. Available in the App Store now.
Hi, I'm Ashley Manuel from Growing with Gratitude, and you're listening to The In Show.
It's David Grice and Troy Sincock, and if you've missed an episode, make sure you subscribe to the In Show podcast on iTunes, and be sure to resubscribe to our new feed. That's the In Show with the coloured logo.
The In Show.
Well, David, last week we presented the In Show in front of a live audience as part of the Adelaide Podcast Festival.
We did, and it was so much fun. Actually, it was really good to not have to look at you across the table from me the whole night.
Well, thanks very much for that. I got to tell you, podcasting people are kind of crazy. There was a guy with dark sunglasses, the attitude consultant, that kind of blew up at the end of his podcast and just seemed angry with the world. Another guy with a massive, what looked like a flute come harp kind of thing.
It looked a little bit overbearing for me, I've got to say. But, I think what he was doing, Troy, was taking people into the forest and making them lie down, and he'd play it for them.
Yeah, imagine experiencing that. Well, on the night, we were joined by Australia's most connected LinkedIn woman, Leanne Isaacson, and this is what happened.
Now, look, we're happy to announce tonight that we're actually in 45 countries. We're in episode number 35. And those countries will be obviously tuning into what we're doing right now, which is our first ever live broadcast. And I guess it's really worth shouting out to a few of those countries. And there's no particular order here, but we've got listeners in Canada, Croatia, Egypt, France, Germany, Israel, Japan, Nigeria, over the Dutch in New Zealand, Russia, Seychelles. Has anyone heard of that as a country, by the way? Yeah, so who on earth would have thought that innovation was being important in Seychelles, but they're there. United States is actually the biggest country in the world listening to us right now, especially our friends in San Francisco. And we have another one called Yemen that's on our radar as well. And that's just a few of them.
Yeah, it shows that innovation really is a global thing. And what we've discovered when talking to startups and entrepreneurs and innovators, that it's actually not been so much about the technology that they've been part of, but more about the stories and their dedication and their commitment and the sacrifice that it's taken for them to really make a stand for others to help make the world a better place. It's been incredible, some of the stories that we've had come out of the show, David.
I mean, when we started this, we started with the idea of building a community around innovation. So we wanted to find people with great ideas and help them find people around the world that would help them make those ideas real. But when we started to talk to people, and we found these people just coming out of the woodwork. When the Space Convention was here last year, this guy came to us out of the blue, did a Google search on innovation media in South Australia, and we came up and we spoke to this guy who was an Israeli fighter pilot, and he shared with us not about the satellites that he was building, but about his life, where this was all about how he had to wake up every single morning and know that he was going to cause human devastation by flying these fighter planes into these, war-torn areas. He left the Israeli army or the Israeli Air Force and told us then that he was scared of bungee jumping. He could go 9 Gs in a fighter plane, but he couldn't do bungee jumping. So hearing those kinds of stories, and then within that, we probably spent a couple of minutes on actually why he came to talk to us, which is about his satellites.
And if I remember rightly, he was wasn't he involved with NASA with the space shuttle that crashed and the people on board died? He was involved in that as well.
He was on the ground, and he was the guy that actually had to go and talk to the families after the devastation of that. So being able to openly share those stories for us was just absolutely mind-blowing. And another one that comes to mind is late last year we had an aerospace engineer from NASA here, and he was here to talk to the Uni Adelaide's Think Lab. But we found out his story was he grew up in his father's building company, so he became a builder and then decided he really liked landscaping. So then what he did was he thought he'd start a lawn mowing round. Before he knew it, within the first 12 months he had 35 employees, a $1.3 million business. But what he was passionate about was fixing the lawnmowers because nobody could fix them for him. So then he did an engineering degree, mechanical engineering, and while he was in the university doing those studies, it was a community college, by the way, which is kind of interesting. But then while he was doing that, he actually had the opportunity to work on a project that was sending cancer cells into space. And that happened to be with NASA. And then within 6 months, he was employed by NASA, and he's now an aerospace engineer.
It kind of gives everyone hope, going from repairing lawnmowers to working for NASA within a matter of years.
Well, I'm a carpenter by trade, so surely there's some hope for me.
You've got a big future ahead of you. What about that Japanese teacher that made that robot that looked exactly like him?
Yeah, so he cloned himself. He made a robot of himself, put artificial intelligence behind it, and then he's a professor at a university and used the robot to actually give the lectures. And because there's AI behind his robot, someone would ask him the questions, and knowing that it was a robot, and the answers that would come back would be absolutely perfect. They'd be right. And then there's an eye drop guy. You know, this guy who's wearing glasses in the room. I know Troy's, been complaining about eyesight for a long time. But this guy's got an eye drop that restores the youthful elasticity in the eye, which then means that nobody's going to need glasses ever again. So these are the kind of guys that we've been, people that we've been able to get their stories out of.
Yeah, it's been a great experience doing this podcast. Obviously, I work in radio, but there's been something about the freedom of this podcast and working outside the format of the radio station that I work for that's just had me see this whole other world and how extraordinary people actually are, how big people are and what they're really up to. What we're discovering that with the advances in technology, it really is kind of the human skills that are coming to the fore, communication, partnerships and ultimately connection. And that's what tonight's guest is all about. With a background in farming, Leanne Isaacson now considers herself a digital farmer. In fact, the sale of her farm settled today. Australia's most connected LinkedIn woman, Leanne is a connection creator. Please welcome Leanne to the show and the Adelaide Podcast Festival.
Thank you, Troy. Thank you, David.
So, Leanne, we've had a lot of fun talking about your stories. So you've gone from a farm. We had a couple of emus as pets roving around in your backyard.
Yeah, I did actually, yeah.
But now you're connecting with people globally. How the hell did that happen?
I don't really know. I don't know actually. I've always been a connector and a networker and a relationship builder. So it's just something that comes naturally. And I went on to LinkedIn, 2007, in October 2007, so 10 years ago, and I just sort of fiddled around with it for a while and sort of started building my network in 2012. I learned a bit more about it, and yeah, it's just been something that's just been a gradual thing. So I actually added up today, I've got 31,402 connections.
Holy moly.
Now tell me about your ideas around connection, because some people think, particularly when they're in business and that kind of thing, they go out and they go to all these networking functions. You kind of see networking and connection as different, right?
Yeah, I do. I suppose networking, they're certainly connected, but for me connections is actually building relationships with people. And I know that, especially with my LinkedIn network, a lot of people have said to me, well, you can't possibly know that many people. And look, no, I don't, absolutely. But for me, it's like a virtual handshake. Like I don't walk into a room and not shake hands with someone just because you don't know them. But it's actually then about, building a connection and a relationship and finding the things that press their buttons and, commonalities and, that's how you find out stories and that's how you find skills and knowledge and, how you can learn.
I think a lot of people will ask, what the heck do you do with all of this? Is this something that is just, it's there for fun, or are you doing something with that?
Generally what I have, for a long time I actually didn't tell anyone that I had so many connections because, for a couple of reasons. I was a bit scared that I would have 30,000 people messaging me every day. So potentially that could happen. So for a long time I actually didn't tell anyone. It was part of my learning, and I was learning about the platform. And but what I tend to do now is actually I make connections for other people. So, someone said to me once, can you find me a lawyer in London that specialises in media entertainment law? This guy was in Colorado. So I said, yeah, sure. So, I did some searches and I found a particular lady that I knew that fitted, exactly what he needed. So I contacted her and put the two of them together. So I tend to, join the dots for people.
And what is at the source of you wanting to connect people?
I think it's, we all have knowledge and we all have skills, and for me, I just naturally, see where the pieces fit together. So it's about helping people solve problems or vice versa, finding what they need.
How interesting is this, that somebody who is a farmer has so many LinkedIn connections in the first place? Because you think that would be something reserved for those people that have, got some sort of profile in the world and that sort of thing. A humble farmer has got all these people, but how do you filter this out? Like, is there a mechanism that you have in place that, enables you to fit these people together in some way?
I probably never discount a connection. Look, realistically, would I have some fake profiles in my network? Absolutely. They don't cause me any harm. If they do, there's always a disconnect button. But you just never know who someone else knows.
That's why you disconnected me.
Yeah, sorry.
Bugger.
I did. Sorry.
You wouldn't be
about
the first person, Leanne, just out of interest.
Sorry. So I think it's really, it's just you sort of get to know, who's. I suppose it's about the relationships again.
Mm-hmm. I remember you telling me a story that was never featured on the podcast when we spoke to you about your son and the environment that he was working in and how that had you really see how some people are living. Can you tell us about that?
Oh, I think it's my son works for Melbourne over in Melbourne for a corporate valuation firm, and it's such a cutthroat corporate environment. And for me, it's actually about developing relationships. I've got a friend of mine who's worked in an organisation, a corporate organisation for, 7 years, and he doesn't know the name of his boss's wife or kids. And you think, how can you actually work in that sort of an environment and not know that? So for me, it's always is the personal connection. And that's, I think that's where LinkedIn, for me, has been, building the relationships with people.
You talked about being a digital farmer. Can you just explain what the digital farmer is? You talked about the seed and how that. Yeah.
Well, it was when our farm sold. Well, it's actually settled today, so it's a bit of a bittersweet day. Anyway, I'm driving away from the farm for the really last time was interesting, but for me. You build relationships. It's like planting a seed. You plant it in the ground, and if you nurture it, you give it water, you give it sunlight, that it's going to grow. But some seeds grow faster than others, and sometimes something might come bear fruit within 6 months. Some might take 10 years, but you just never know. And so a lot of the digital farming stuff is just. Someone said it to me once because I said, well, what am I? I'm a farmer without a farm. And he said, you're a digital farmer. This is what you do.
Well, you're much more than that. You're the first guest we've ever had at a live podcast. So please thank Leanne Isaacson for joining us. Australia's most connected LinkedIn woman.
Next week on The In Show.
So, Troy, I'm going to leave you alone next week. I'm heading over to Austin, Texas for South by Southwest Festival. And I've been to South by now for, 3 or 4 years. And this is the world's largest music and technology festival. It also has film in it as well. And it's just incredible. If you haven't been to Austin, it's very similar to Adelaide. We're sister cities. The people are amazing there, but South by is absolutely stunning.
Well, we look forward to hearing who you catch up with while you're over there. Of course, Claire's going to be back with more innovation news from all around the world. And you can resubscribe to The In Show on iTunes. It's the new feed with a coloured logo. Listen to the podcast, rate us 5 stars if you like. And while you're online, check out the Australian Podcast Awards. The In Show is up for the business and marketing category, and you can also vote for us as part of the popular vote.
Yes, please vote for us so that we can be a little bit more popular than just you and I.
And Leanne now. So that's 3, David.
Oh, 3. Well, we've gone up 50% over, within the last half an hour. How good's that? What a show this week, Troy. Got to share with our listeners what it's like to experience the In Show in front of a live audience. Now, before we go, here's Matt Tetlow from Innovore Technologies talking about the value of an ecosystem and creating connections within a community.
Well, I think an ecosystem is so important. You can't just get up and have the space industry and it's just me and I can do everything and I don't want anybody else to be there with you. You basically have to have this ecosystem. So I would strongly encourage everybody who's got an idea, got a passion for it, to give it a go. See where your widget fits in the world and, talk to the people. The industry is very open. It's a very tight-knit community. Everybody knows each other. And it's fantastic when you get into it. You kind of have reached across a number of different companies as well, and schools and universities. And we try and engage with schools as well, and obviously I'm very close to the university, so Yeah, I strongly encourage you, just give it a go. I mean, you got to have a lot of drive and persistence, because, you get knocked back all the time. Just be prepared to get knocked back, and just make sure you're ready for being knocked back, and don't stay sitting down when you do get knocked back. Just stand up again and try again, and eventually it sort of happens. I spent a number of years trying to get launch type projects off, like sort of control systems for rockets and things like that, trying to get grants in the Australian Space Research Program came up, and all those sorts of things. I applied for all of the rounds and got nothing, and you kind of build yourself up to you think you're going to get it, and then you don't get it. So I mean, I've got so many of those, and it's difficult. I won't lie to you, it's not the sort of thing that I like doing. I much prefer when you have success stories. I mean, the same with our satellite, didn't go to plan, and that was very disappointing. There's a lot of work, and a lot of people put a lot of effort into it. But the thing is, you just got to rather step back and say, well, what did we learn from it? We learned so much more. I mean, there's no one in Australia that's built as many subsystems as we have. So anybody else who wants to get in this still hasn't learned the lessons that we have. So we're still ahead of everybody else, and we have a great team. And you just got to, I guess, persevere, get around the right people. Make sure that you're open to having other people with different ways of thinking. Get everybody together. So it's about getting an ecosystem and giving it a go. And basically, if you get knocked back, okay, you can sit down for a couple of days and lick your wounds, but then get up again and say, well, what did I learn from it? Where do we go from here?
The In Show, presented by David Grice and Troy Sincock. News by Shannon Corvo and Claire Murphy. Music by Zach Grice. Produced by Jason Walker. Subscribe to the In Show podcast on iTunes. A Dave and the Beanstalk production.
Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to AuscastNetwork.com for details.